everyone, it's Stacey, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these super cute fabric pumpkins. My pattern comes in 3 different sizes and you can mix and match and use up to 6 different fabrics. It's entirely up to you, so let me show you how to make them. To make my fabric pumpkins you'll need fabric, and the amount you need will depend on what size you're making them and how many fabrics you want to use to make each pumpkin, so just use my template as your guide for that. You'll need thread, polyester fibre fill, and something to be the stalk of your pumpkin. You could use a cinnamon stick, wooden dowel, or stick. So for my fabric pumpkins, you can make a large, a medium, and a small, and you can find my template that you need to print out and cut out over on my website. I'll put a link in the description below. So pick which size you'd like to make. For this tutorial, I'll be making the medium. Take some paper scissors and cut out your template. Okay, now for each pumpkin we need to cut out 6 pieces of fabric with our template. So I've got my 6 pieces here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to lay them all on top of each other nicely and cut them in one go. If you want to, you could cut them individually or just 2 or 3 to go, but 6 is fine. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is more of a craft project obviously than a sewing or quilting project. So let's cut them all together, which makes this a really nice quick project. I'm just going to pop some pins in to keep my template in place, and you do want to make sure that the fabric is underneath the template, and actually I'm lucky that one there is just on the template. If it wasn't, I'd need to undo the pins and just move it down a bit so that it is going to fit in the template when I cut it. So now I'll just take my fabric scissors and cut around my template, cutting as closely as I can to the template. And I did place all the fabrics right side up, although it doesn't matter actually because it's perfectly symmetrical. Okay, so just taking those pins out. And now we have 6 pieces perfectly cut out, and you can see if we just flip it over to the back, I did manage to catch both those edges nicely, so just keep an eye on that. So now I've just placed the fabrics in the order that I'd like to sew them together, and I just did use 3 fabrics. So I've got the 3 here and then 3 again, so then they'll just be rotating around my pumpkin. Now you could use all the same fabrics for this project. You could have every single side a different fabric, just whatever you prefer. So now I'm just going to take these first 2, fold them right sides together, line up the edges, and I will just pop a pin in the top here just to hold them together when I sew them, and we're just going to sew along one side. So because this is just a general sewing project, I'm using my Gutermann thread. I'm on stitch length 2.5, and I do have my 1/4 inch foot on. So as I begin, I'm just going to go forward a couple of stitches, and then I will do a back stitch because it just helps the pieces stay together when we're turning it right sides out. And then I'm just going to go along this curved edge nice and slowly. And then when I get to the bottom, I'll just do a couple of stitches back, doing a back stitch, stitch off the edge, trim the threads. I'm just going to trim them so they don't get in my way. And then I'm going to open it up. And then I'm going to take my next piece, place it on top, right sides together, and pin and sew just like I did. And I'll repeat that for all 6 pieces. So turning it back to the piece that I just sewed on, opening it up, and then taking my next piece to make sure I am sewing them in the correct order. And now I'll just carry on until I've done that for all 6 pieces. Okay, and once we've sewn on that last piece, now we're going to open it up. It looks kind of cute like that. But now we're going to take the two ends and place them together, right sides together, pin and sew just like we did all the other sides, which now creates our cylinder shape. Okay, now on to the next step. So now just with some regular cheap thread, it doesn't matter what you use for this, but I'm just going to cut a longish piece of thread. We are going to fold it in half, so make it a little bit long. Oh, I'm all caught up in my thread. And then we'll find the two ends and pop it through the eye of my needle like that. And I've got a longish needle, well the longest needle that I could find in my supplies, and I'll just thread that. And now we've got a loop at the end, and the two ends have gone through the eye of the needle. So at one end, all I'm going to do is about 1/4 inch in. It doesn't have to be exact, but it would be better to be more than 1/4 inch than less than 1/4 inch. Just anywhere. I'm going to do it on a seam here. I'm just going to put my needle through just a few threads and bring it out, and then I'm just going to thread it through that loop. And what that does is it gives me a really secure knot that can't come undone. And then I'm just going to weave my needle up and down, doing a basting stitch around the whole bottom at about 1/4 inch, or even a little bit more than 1/4 inch, so it's nice and generous. So we've got our really nice secure knot, and we've got double thread, so it's going to be nice and strong. And I'm just going up and down through the fabric, doing a basting stitch. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just to gather the bottom in. So I'm just turning and going around. I guess if you wanted to know exactly how many stitches, I'm trying to get at least 2 or 3 on every side panel here. And then once I come back to where I started, I'll just go past that a little bit. Okay, so I started here and now I've just gone past a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the ends don't go through that eye of the needle. I'm going to hold on to that, but I'm also going to give this a tug, which gathers it all in. And I'm going to give it a tug quite firmly, and we've got double thread, so it's nice and strong. Making sure it's as firm as I can pull it. Then I'm just going to do a couple of knots here to secure it. And that's closing off our bottom. So I've put the needle through and I've got a loop there, so I'm just going to put my needle through the loop, making a knot. And I'll do that 3 or 4 times just because I'm paranoid and I want to make sure it's extra strong and definitely not coming off. Okay, then I'm just going to trim my thread. I won't trim it too close because there's no need to. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the opening. I'm going to put my fingers in, grab the bottom and pull it right sides out. And now you can see we're getting a bit of a pumpkin look, and that's our gathered bottom. Now I'm going to get my polyfill and fill it up. So I've just got my polyfill here. I've gone through quite a bit of it making all my little samples, so I'm just going to pop that in the hole, or the opening rather. And I just want it to be nice and firm, not too firm, because we want to be able to pull it in, getting all our nice wrinkles, but we don't want it to be too floppy, or else it won't have a good shape. And what I've found is useful is just to pop my fingers in the middle and push it out into all the sides, because we want a really nice, healthy looking pumpkin. Okay, I'll just put a little bit more in. All right, so you can see that's holding its shape quite nicely, but it's not absolutely jam-packed. So once you're happy with how much polyfill you've popped in there, let's do our thread again. So I'm going to take this out and discard it. I'll cut some more thread. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to put the two ends together and pop it through the eye of my needle like that. And then I'm just going to start on a seam again, and once again about 1/4 of an inch in. So just catching a little bit of thread there, pulling it through, and then putting my needle through that loop there, which creates a really nice secure knot that can't come undone. And then once again, I'm just going to stitch around at least a 1/4 inch in from my edge. And then when I get back to where I started, I'll just go a little bit past that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on it gently, and you can see it's closing up the gap there. Make sure I don't lose the ends of my thread. And I'm just gently pulling it, and as I am pulling it and it's getting smaller and smaller the gap, what I'm going to do is just push in all those raw edges. And then you can see that all the raw edges have been tucked inside, and then I'm going to pull it quite firmly. And then I'm going to just push down and secure it. Now we don't want to secure it too well because then we can't put our stalk in, but I find it's virtually impossible to do it so tight you can't get your stalk in. So I'm just pushing down to create a bit of pressure there so it doesn't come undone, and I'm just going to do a knot again about 3 or 4 times just so it's nice and secure. Okay, so I can see my hole is there, which is perfect for my stalk. So I did pull it quite firmly, but I find even when you do it really firm, I always do end up with a little hole there, which is then perfect for my stalk. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle, pop it through the center, and then push it out through the bottom. Doesn't have to be exact, just be careful you don't poke yourself. Grab the needle, and then we're going to pop it back through the bottom and back out through the top. So just being careful you don't prick yourself, and this is when a longer needle that you've got is really handy. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to push it down again to create a bit of tension so that we get the pumpkin having the, I don't know what you'd call it, like the divot in. Whereas if I let go, you can see it pops back up. Well, we want that divot, which creates that real pumpkin effect. So I just hold it down, and once again, just do a few knots. Okay, and then you can let it go and check that you're happy with it. I'm happy with that. But if you weren't, you could do that again. You could put it through the center, pull it out through the bottom, and pop it back up through and tie it off again. And also with the opening, if you felt like your opening was too big, you could always just snip the thread and try doing it again. But I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to trim my thread now. And now all I'm going to do to finish it off is give it a bit of a squeeze, just to make it sitting nice and plush and getting a nice shape. You see, if I didn't do that, it could be quite flat, but I like it to be kind of pushed up, creating that real pumpkin look. And then I'm going to grab a cinnamon stick. So I've got a cinnamon stick here. It's a bit long as it is, so I'm just going to snap it in half and pop that guy in there. And there we have it, a really cute little fabric pumpkin. So don't forget you can find my pattern and the template over on my website, and I'll put a link in the description below. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you for watching my videos. If you're enjoying them, please like, subscribe and leave a comment.